Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Better Way Thursday workshop. We're excited to have you here. And we're talking today about a really important topic. And I was actually surprised that we haven't already done a workshop on this because it is such an important topic. So I was super excited to have this conversation with Lisa Taylor, who's going to be our presenter today, to talk about mentorship. And we know that having a mentor and being a mentor is a great part of growing your own career and getting ahead in your career. And especially for so many women who are part of our Tech Moms community who are emerging professionals who are maybe transitioning into a new type of profession, a new industry, or coming back to the workforce after a break, having someone who's a little further along in their journey to help you, give you advice, see things in you that maybe you don't see in yourself is so critical. So I'm super excited about this conversation today. And Lisa, thank you for joining us. We're so glad you're here. I'm just going to have you introduce yourself and go ahead with the presentation. So I'll turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Well, it's great to be here with everybody at Tex Moms, and as Robin mentioned, I'm going to talk about meaningful mentorship, and I appreciate the fact that she talked about our demographic and how what our challenges are, and I'm going to share a little bit about mine and my history. Um, right, graduating from high school, I got a job with a software company, a little startup, and fell in love with marketing and technology and had a career before I took what I call a maternal sabbatical, right? Many of you may have done the same, either by choice, which was mine. It was a deliberate choice to stop and raise my children, or life happens sometimes and you're forced to pivot, which is okay too. And while I was raising my kids, I had I call them hobbies that pay. You'll see in the picture here, there's some cooking utensils. I was a personal chef for several years. Um, I had a dance teaching career, and I was on boards of directors for some professional dance companies. I've got a lot of creative muscles that I like to develop. I make jewelry, things like that. But there's also a tech intellectual business side of me. And fortunately, um, when it was required for me to go back to work, I had a little bit of that background. So about 10 years ago, I jumped back into the workforce with 2 feet. And as Robin mentioned, sometimes that's scary. It was overwhelming for me, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a part of Tech Moms is because I've been there. I've been one of those people who is like, this is bigger than I think I am. Um, Again, the picture shows competitive intelligence book. I was a competitive intelligence and market business analyst for a few years for a software company. Been a project product manager. Jumped over to other technical and sales type of roles, most recently for a food company. So that renews my interest in food things as vice president of enterprise transformation and people strategy. One of the biggest things that I absolutely love is making order out of chaos. And that's with people, with processes, with programs. So loving getting in there and just saying, how can we make sense of this? And one of the things that with the people is that I've set up mentorship programs for several different companies, both nonprofit and for profit. One of those being because of my challenges, I saw that there weren't resources in the company that I was with. And so I set up a mentorship program. So a lot of the stuff I'll talk about today has direct reflection on what I put into practice, not only with my own life as a mentor. I don't know if you can see this. It says here to mentor, right? Um, One of the companies that I worked with, if you were a mentor, you got one of these little things, and it sits right here at my desk. And I believe wholeheartedly in mentoring, both as a mentee, I need a mentor, several, and we'll talk about what that means, and to be a mentor. It's meaningful on both sides. So that's a little bit about me, Robin. Should I continue? Do you have any questions?
No, no, go ahead. I'm excited to learn more about your journey through the context of mentoring.
Yeah, perfect. So this is just a little, I guess, analogy visual that I want to start out with. So if you look at this tree section, right, there's a center, and the center, if this represents each of us, is our core, right? Our values and our identity. And each one of those rings is a season in our lives, right? So I talked about my seasons. Um, some are thick, some are thin. Each season comes with either abundance or drought, and that's reflected in these rings here. For me, the seasons of my life have been challenging, lesson teaching, stretch periods, growth, and then there's some that are restful, right? And so I think what's important is to look at each of our lives as the big picture, not what I'm in right now. And one of the things that is very important with mentorship is that mentorship doesn't skip seasons. It doesn't replace growth. It helps you grow to the next ring, but with intention, right? So it's an intentional evolution, I like to call that. Um, and mentorships help with that intentional evolution. So let's talk about what we're gonna cover today, right? So we're gonna talk about what is mentorship, what are the benefits. Maybe you're thinking like, am I ready for this? Maybe I've never done it before, or maybe I want to jump back into it, right? So we'll talk about that. Types of mentors, how to find a good fit, right? How to get started, and then how to make it successful. So, what is a mentor? Well, again, being a mentor is different than mentorship, right? If you think of what is a mentor? I have a spouse or a partner. I have friends. I have coworkers. What is the significance of a mentor, right? And if you look at these words, you may say, well, my friends and all, your tribe or your support group maybe provides all this, but a mentor is different because it's very focused on usually something professional or leadership or skills based, right? Less less on a personal level, or relationship level, like maybe a therapist would be. So what's the difference between coaching and mentoring, right? Which is important. Um, so mentoring helps foster and facilitate a culture of growth and development, usually within organizations, right? So I've worked for several companies, both large and small, that have mentorship programs built in. If you have one of those in your company, I highly recommend that you take advantage of that. If not, the beautiful thing is with technology nowadays, LinkedIn and all these things, you can find mentors pretty easy, right? Within your network or within the reach of what's available to us. So you coaching is on the flip side, assesses like performance in a particular area. I want to get a job. I'm having struggles with, a certain thing like maybe a performance-based something, right? Um, Mentorship concentrates on development needs and goals based on career, right? And coaching maybe concentrates on specific behaviors or skills. And mentorship, I've lived this. And I love this part of mentorship, benefits both the mentor and the mentee. It's a very reciprocal thing. And if you're thinking, well, I don't know if I want to be a mentee, but maybe I could be a mentor, it's very, very gratifying, right? Coaching usually is, I'm the coach, I'm helping you. And the last thing is just mentorship, and I've seen this turn in my life, usually builds long-lasting relationships. I have mentors that I've had for years, and I don't talk to them as frequently anymore, um, as maybe I did when I was with that organization or needing, a certain thing for a certain career. But I know they're still in my corner, right? And coaching is usually a time-bound type of thing. I want you to help me fix this or solve this, right?
And
So
Lisa, usually a coach is someone you hire, right? So you usually
yes,
pay a coach, and a
that's
mentor, you're
another.
not paying a mentor, right? Yeah,
Oh, yeah, that's another good point, right? So a coach is someone who is like, I need this for this certain amount of time, and I'm going to pay you
yeah,
for that outcome. A mentor is someone that you invite into your circle, into your life, to help you learn and grow, right? And it's
perfect.
it's it's a deeper relationship for sure. So mentorship is intentional, right? Mentoring is intentional, it's strategic growth, it's skill building, partnership. And like I mentioned, it's long term. It's not a personal rescue. Like I'm going to get a mentor and it's going to fix everything in my job, right? Or it's going to magically help me get a promotion, right? You have to put the work in. And it's not a guarantee of success because, you have to have skin in the game. So maybe you're thinking, well, why do I need a mentor? And that's a really good question. So let's kind of dive into some topics of why a mentor would be um, something that you could invest in because it is an investment in yourself, right? So for career advancement and strategy, like they'll help you to identify gaps, set goals, navigate paths to promotion, right? Like um, things that are critical for women that are unique to women, I think it's really important to have that mentorship. Um, I've never done anything in my career that I've done before, right? So I'm always in that growth space of, how do I tackle this? And sometimes it's daunting. And we have, AI, we have all of our technical resources, but that doesn't replace the human connection of being seen, being validated, and seeing that growth path, right? That holistic part of that person. So that's one part of it. Skill development and confidence, it's really important to get honest, constructive feedback to build self-awareness, right? So sometimes, your spouse, your partner, your friends, they sometimes tell you what you want to hear. Um, because there's not that emotional connection at first, a lot of the times mentors will be able to say, what, this is what I see. And for me in my life, some of those things have kind of been like, oh, I didn't know that about myself, or I didn't realize I am seeing the situation as my filter as opposed to like an external view, right? So, things like so many women need just some tutelage and guidance on things like imposter syndrome and leadership skills and negotiation. Mentors definitely can help with that. Networking and visibility. That's another great one. As women, it's great to connect with other women and men in key industry positions, right? Where maybe something can be connected or opportunities can be seen. Um, the next one is empowerment and retention, right? So this is, within an organization, women who have, there's lots of statistics on this, women who have mentors, they feel more satisfied with their jobs. They're more likely to stay at the organizations and they feel more empowered in their roles, right? So if you're looking at an organization, a mentorship program is extremely valuable for that. And then navigating challenges. I personal experience with this, I had a very challenging. Oh, did that disappear? Are we back? Okay.
You're
Sorry about
good. Yeah, yeah.
that. Okay. I had a very challenging boss that was very critical of me, and I was really having a hard time navigating, like just communicating with her on a business level. I was bringing presentations, I was doing one-on-ones, but I didn't feel seen or heard. And so I reached out to a mentor in my organization, and I laid it on the line. I said, "This is what I'm doing. This is what I want." And she helped to be that bridge between helping me get to what I wanted and what I was doing. And you know, I think that alone is a great reason to search out a mentor, right? For those of you that may be on the other side and like, well, should I mentor? And this is also, as you're talking to a mentor, they may be saying, well, what's in it for me type of thing. Um, great benefits to being a mentor, right? Great self-awareness because you have to think like, oh, in my life, how did I navigate those things? You expand your network, your leadership skills get displayed. How am I going to manage this person? How I'm going to help this person receive their, attain their goals, things like that, and the other things on this list. But the biggest thing for me, and I think I probably mentored over probably 75 to 100 women, men, in my life, personal, professional career. Um, and this is intentional mentoring, right? Not just friendship. Like people who have asked or, that situations come up. It is an extremely satisfying thing to see someone obtain their potential, right? If you reflect on those of us who are parents, it's like that type of satisfaction when you see your child obtain a goal or reach that certain, point in their life. So you can pitch
Lisa,
those things. Yeah.
can we just go back to that slide for just
Yeah,
a second?
absolutely.
I'm so grateful that you shared this because not only because those of us who are watching who think, oh, maybe it's time for me to start mentoring others and look at all the things that will come, that can come to me as I'm providing that mentoring to
Yeah.
somebody else. But I think it's also really important for those of us who are seeking mentors and recognizing that we want to be mentees to recognize there is going to be this mutually beneficial relationship, and so that
Mhm.
can help us kind of overcome a little bit of our fear and discomfort for asking for some mentoring. Like, let's recognize, yes, I'm going to get great benefits from this, but also the person that I'm working with, they're going to too, and maybe that can take away a little bit of our fear for asking,
Absolutely.
someone to help us out. So I love that you're sharing this from
Mhm.
both perspectives because it is super valuable on both sides.
And I like that. I like that too, because, it can be scary to ask for what we need. And I think a lot of women feel that like we're nurturers and we take care of everyone around us, right? And so saying I need this and asking for that puts us in this space of like, well, what does that look like? What does that sound like? And so knowing that, yeah, it is absolutely beneficial to the other person. It is important. When we talk about jumping in, are we ready? That's our next thing. There's a psychologist, Carol Dweck. She's from Stanford, I believe, and she's done a lot of research on mindset. And I think her book is called The New Psychology of Success, and she talks about a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, right? So as we think, am I ready for this? There's two types of assessments that I think need to happen. First of all, an internal, right? Am I coachable? How do you take feedback? Because a lot of mentoring is feedback, like, and sometimes that can hurt because it's honest. And if we're not ready to self-confront and say, okay, maybe I have this tendency, to exaggerate my stories, or maybe I have this tendency to procrastinate large projects, or, maybe I don't believe in myself. Maybe I am awesome, um, realizing that you need to receive that feedback as a gift. And Robin, I would love to do another podcast about that if you haven't done that as well. Receiving feedback as a gift is it's an important skill that everyone needs. Personal and professional life, right?
Oh yeah.
Do I follow through? Is this going to be a hollow relationship where you give suggestions and that stops there, right? Mentors don't like that. And then do I take ownership of my own growth? Am I ready for that next step, right? Um, in the nonprofit world, I'm a part of an organization where we help women who's experienced trauma. And one of the things that we talk about is, are they ready for a hand up or are they just wanting a hand out? And I think that's also a good approach to mentorship, right? Do I just want to hand out like, here's my network, you go for it, or do I really want to hand up? Do I really want to take ownership of my growth? Which, that's the internal assessment, right?
Lisa,
Um,
I was
yeah,
just having a conversation this morning with some family members because I'm often asked to help people find jobs. That's what I do for my job, and I'd love to help people
yeah,
find jobs. And I was talking about the fact that I have learned over the years that I cannot care more about somebody's success than they care about their own success. So looking at
absolutely.
this taking ownership, and so what I've started doing, I people reach out and they say, "Oh, my friend needs some help. Can I give her your number?" And I said, "No, them my number." And if they call me
Yeah,
and follow through, and if they're willing to do the work, I'm happy to help. But I can't be the one reaching out. So when you're thinking about this as a mentee, you've got to be the one driving the relationship. And the mentor can help a lot, but they can't care more than you care about your own career. So I love that, taking ownership of your own
100%.
growth.
It's taking initiative, right? And so as we look at this other internal part of self-exploration, um, this is just diving a little bit deeper into some of those questions, right? So when I receive feedback, maybe we can ask ourselves these questions. Do I get defensive or am I curious? What is true about what they said, you know? And again, like we can talk about all sorts of receiving and is it true? Is it not? What do I take? What's the gift? Um, do I explain why I'm right, which is part of being defensive, right? Or say, yeah, maybe I can improve on that, right? I was just talking to my husband last night about something. He had a situation at work, and I just said, well, what about that conversation is right about you? And he looked at me like, how dare you? I was like, well, feedback is a gift, and mentorship really is one of those things that can be a gift. And then I think as women, sometimes, we do take criticism hard. So when we receive feedback, is it identity based or is it skill based? Going back to that circle of the wood, our core values, whatever people say to us does not change who we are, right? They can't touch my core. They're helping me build and learn, right? So if some of these are like, oh, I'm not ready, work on yourself. Absolutely. Take that initiative. What about challenges, right? The growth mindset we'll talk about in a minute. What if I fail? You have to get out of that, like the box of, um, I'm here, but I could be here. You have to expand and push. And that can be hard sometimes and intimidating. All those things about facing challenges, right? Um, can you commit to something, right? Do you quit quickly? And then, the other part of it is really where you are in your own space as far as celebrating others, right? So, um, I think some women are very, very good at this. Robin, I think you're very good at this, right? I think that some women are very bad at this. They see everything as a threat and everything is competition. And we need less of that in the world, ladies. We really do, right? So, being able to see others as and celebrate them in turn helps us to celebrate ourselves, right? So a mentor will share things about themselves, and if we have a mindset of like, oh, well, that's just their paradigm, or that wouldn't apply to me, or they're just naturally talented, that's not going to help you, right? So a lot of internal language checks to decide if you're ready is, do you use phrases like, I'm not a technical person, or do you say, I just haven't learned that yet? Do you say, I'm bad at networking? Or do you say, I just need more practice, right? The key word in those language checks is yet, right? There's one way of thinking and then the other way of thinking, and we'll talk about that. So the growth mindset is really important in mentorship because you're meant to grow. Mentorship is meant to grow. So going back to the research that Carol did, a fixed mindset. I don't want to do challenges. It's too hard. It's not going to work. You feel threatened, right? And then a growth mindset, which is scary and it's out of our comfort zone sometimes, and mentorship can be, right? I want to get a promotion. Oh, how do I do that? Well, I'm going to ask this person to help me because they're in another department and they did it, you know? So you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to grow, right? So all those things that we've kind of talked about there. So if you have a growth mindset, you have those conversations in your head, you've done the internal work, right? And like you said, a mentor can't help you grow if you believe your capacity is fixed. If you're like, I'm just this way, um, maybe reconsider if mentorship's a good time for you right now. And mentorship really accelerates people who believe they are expandable, right? I can do this. I got this, right? So that's the internal. The external is do the work, right? So read the books, take the course, try the thing, do the stretch assignment, right? And I'm not saying you have to do all these before you get a mentor, but maybe assess, like do a couple of them and say, okay, I'm ready. I want to do this. I want to do this for myself. And a lot of these things can be context for a common conversation, a common language with your mentor, right? Hey, I read this book. It's called Atomic Habits. I'm a procrastinator and I have these projects. Let's use the book to help me, right? And if they've read it, which it's a very popular book, chances are they have, you have a common language, right? Whereas if you're starting from zero and you haven't worked on yourself at all, it's hard for them to just, pull that plant out of the ground because it's got to grow, right?
Yes, I
So,
I love this list so much of these things, and I love the idea of doing these things all throughout the process, right?
yes.
Of your mentoring experience, because what a great way to show your mentor that you are really serious. And as a mentor, it is much more satisfying to be supporting someone who is supporting themselves, right?
Yes.
And so I love all these ideas
Mhm.
of really showing I'm willing to do the work. Thanks for showing up with me, but I'm going to give as much as I can to make sure this is a great experience for both of us. So I love this
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's a lot more resources for this, like um if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to share resources that way. So yes, upward momentum. Mentors invest where there's movement, right? So if they see progress, they say, okay, and it's not I'm not going to do it if I don't see that you're growing, because growth can be small. It's that you're invested, right? So this is an investment in yourself and you're worth it. And it's an amazing thing that you should take advantage of. I'm going to tell you a story. This is Talia. Okay. Talia is from Brazil. And I met her at an academy where I was a guest speaker for a week. And she came to me and she says, Lisa, this is what I want to do. Will you be my mentor? And I said, okay. She wanted to be a sales development representative, an SDR, right? She learned English, she was perfecting her English, and she had a goal. And I was like, okay, let's sit down. What do you want to do? And she was looking for a job at the time. And she didn't just come and say, help me find a job, right? Like Robin, like here's my problem. She was like, okay, the, I'm doing practice calls. Can I do a practice call with you? And very receptive to feedback, and knew herself very well. Um, and, I looked at her resume and I taught her some things about, presenting herself. And then she got a job. And I thought, okay, well, maybe that was the goal. She reached out a couple months later and she says, I want to build a playbook. You've done that before. Help me build a sales playbook. I said, okay. She goes, wait, um, I'm going to do a draft and then I want you to look at it, which is a different way of doing things, right? Like a lot of times the approach is like, how do I attack this project? You tell me and then I'll go to it. She did a draft and then I said, okay, here's one I've done. You compare it to yours. What did you learn from that? And we talked about that. And that was, we met for about every other week for a couple months. She's killing it now, right? She's one of the top sellers, and we connect. I'm talking to her today, actually, this afternoon, and she calls me from Brazil, which I think is so cute, and we have a beautiful friendship But this is a great example of her investment, right? Um, and like this slide mentions, um, when you bring effort, mentorship works, right? And if you're invested in yourself, people want to invest in you. And that goes with jobs, that goes with personal life, that goes with relationships, right? Um, so I think having a mentor can help in all sorts of areas of our lives. So none of us are finished, but when you decide I want to make that next step, consider a mentor, right? Um, and there was a point in my career where I was doing competitive intelligence and I was in a company, I think I mentioned this to you, Robin, that was 80% males and 20% females. And I met all these beautiful women, just very professional, strong, amazing women. And I wanted to create an environment where we were all supported. So I wanted to create an employee network, right? Um, and that was a stretch thing for me, right? This is a company of 10,000 people. We were one business unit. And I said, well, what do I want to do? How am I going to do that? And I went to the vice president of employee development. And I asked him, I said, you develop people. I want to develop the women. Will you help me? And I invited him into my mentorship circle. And it's still a beautiful, beautiful relationship. Kevin and I have been friends for over 10 years. And I decided that I wasn't finished in my role. That one thing that I was doing for the company, I wasn't satisfied with, right? And if you have those feelings of like, ugh, this angst of I'm not quite done yet or I want to do something else, let's make a goal. Okay. So we determine if we're ready, what a mentorship is. Let's decide, let's look about, what's the next steps. First of all, you have to have a clear goal, right? And these are just suggestions, right? So career advancement, um, skill development, leadership, personal growth. Brainstorm before you approach your mentor, right? If you just come and say, hey, I want to get better at this, they're going to be like, oh, I don't know what to do with that, right? So have a specific goal in mind, and it can be broad. They can help you refine the goal for sure, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. I like to use the analogy of like a block of clay. This is the kind of clay, this is the color. I kind of know what I want it to look like, and they can help you sculpt it, right? But you have to bring it and say, this is what I want. So, say career goals could be, like moving from an individual to contributor, or from a contributor to a team lead, right? And a time frame. I think that should say lead. I'll fix that. You could position yourself for promotion in the next promotion cycle, or say transition from one position to there, like support to product, right? Um, I've had people reach out to me on that. Like I had a quality control analyst. She's like, I want to be a project manager. How do you do that? You're that. I said, well, you can shadow me. We can talk. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? So career goals, right? Skills development. There's a lot of things. Improve executive communications. That's what I did with my mentor, right? Um, Become more confident in speaking about technical concepts. Strengthen strategic thinking, right? Not just task execution. That's a big one. How do I think more strategically, right? Leadership goals. I think we think a lot of those is kind of intuitive, like, but maybe some things that could be perceived as leadership that we haven't thought of is like a cross-functional product project, right? I want to do this. I see there's a problem. I want to fix it. I just don't know how to navigate, right? Um, Develop confidence managing peers, right? Um, Build influence without formal authority. And I think we've talked about a potential podcast on that one. I think you guys have had that as well. And then how to navigate conflict professionally. That's another great leadership goal, right? Personal goals, and these are work related. These aren't like therapy related, right? So, like, stop shrinking in meetings. Realize that you have a voice, how to find that voice, imposter syndrome, advocate for your value in performance reviews, develop resilience in a career transition. Just examples, right? But you need to have a clear goal, and that's going to take some introspection and some work. Okay. So once you've done that, you have a goal. We're going to talk a little bit about creating that lovely um, circle of influence. I like to call it your pad, right? So if we take the analogy, if we are the airplane, right? And we take off when we land and we take off when we land. That's just how life is, right? Well, we need to know how to navigate that successfully. And so creating a PAD or a personal advisory department um, is important, right? So Dr. Art Markham, I think he's from University of Texas, Austin, I believe. He developed this kind of like trusted team uh, kind of philosophy that helps navigate career turbulence and support smooth takeoffs and landings, if you will, right? So um, mentorship's like having co-pilots, ground crews, air traffic controls, all to help guide you, right? So um, you're still in the plane, you're still doing those things, but you do them smarter and safer, right? No crash landings. So let's talk about each one of these, right? So the coach. Think of a coach. The coach is on the sidelines. You're the player. They're giving you the plays, but you're doing the work, right? So there's that kind of mentor, and kind of see what you want in your life, what you need in your life. Um, Personally, I suggest that everybody has one of these. You know, you create that pad around you, right? Start with one and then add and then add and then add. The star, they guide you, right? So that's the star. Um, where are you going? They keep you on track, right? Is that your goal? You're off your track. The librarian. I'm a librarian for a lot of people. I love that role, right? Go read this. Go look up this. Here's a podcast, things like that. Things that they're just this infinite resource for you of, hey, I want to learn how to do this. And they don't necessarily help you or walk you through it. They're just this font of knowledge, right? Connector. I think you're a connector, Robin, right? So hey, talk to that person. I know who you could talk to here. That is a very valuable person to have if you're in an organization or if you're networking, right? If you're trying to find a job, a connector. Teammate, someone's alongside with you, someone who understands what you're going through. I have a very, very valuable mentor that I used to work with. It was that same situation where I had a toxic boss. She had a toxic boss in the same company. They were different people though. And we would meet, and it wasn't a gripe session. It was like, how are we going to get through this? And she was with me through that. Very, very valuable. But it was a mentor situation because we both had goals and we're helping us through. So, kinds of mentors, right? Um, and I think it's valuable to create that pad. So, what are the purposes, right? So, um, think ahead, be proactive, right? Prioritize yourself, talk you off the ledges, like I talked about. Prepare for critical moments, operate at full potential safely, without taking too much risk or not enough risk, right? Hitting that sweet spot. Um, Unseen perspectives, I think that's a huge thing that mentors can see because they have usually that much more life or professional experience, so they can glean from that. And then validate decisions and instincts, and I do that a lot, right? Like, hey, I'm going here. What do you think? And that was another situation where I went to my mentor Kevin, and I said, hey, I've got this proposal that I'm going to pitch to the CEO about it was to bring kind of a board of directors, like a voice of the customer program for one of our products in a division. And I said, can I just bounce it off you? Can you just listen? Am I on? Am I off? And that was very valuable, very valuable. He gave me completely unbiased, information. And then he also followed up, which I love. He's like, how did it go? which, you need that. You need some of that accountability. So going back to our airplane, right? So the functions of our pad, our landing pad, our launch pad, they can see what you can't, right? So if you're a plane, you can't see what's in the sky, but that air traffic controller can. They can add context to situations, give you perspectives and insights you might miss. Um, they provide actionable feedback, which we talked about before. They forecast turbulence. You know, that might be a pitfall for you, and how valuable is that? From a cockpit of a plane, you can only see what's here, but they know the turbulence is ahead, right? And that I've experienced that in my life as well. Um, so, people who are in maybe more senior roles can say, hey, you know what? I know this is going on in the company. And so there's a strategic move that you could make here. There's turbulence ahead, or there's, clear skies, whatever. They provide runway guidance, right? So opportunities for safe takeoffs and landings, um, risk taking, encourage that. Act as radar and instruments, right? So they offer clarity when visibility is low, which is super important, right? Either emotionally, whether you're not aware of what's going on, or strategically. And then they connect you with, using the connector scenario, connect to air traffic control. They introduce you to networks and resources to navigate your systems in life. And then one thing that I really, really, really resonates with me is they help fuel you for like long flights, right? So ramp up for that podcast I'm going to do on Friday with Robin, right? Or something like that. They motivate you and remind you of your strengths when your energy is low. And we all need that, right? We all need those things. So, how do you find the right fit? And this is important, right? Like, I think sometimes we think, well, it's just got to be the senior most person or, the person who knows the most. Not always true, right? They need to match your goal, first of all, right? So you wouldn't have a plumber teach you how to cook a souffle. Just saying. I could teach you how to cook a souffle, Robin, by the way, if you ever want to know. Um, so match them with your goals. Okay, find someone who's done a similar pivot in their career. Find someone who navigated a promotion, preferably in your company or the same, right? Something that you could relate to specifically. Um, Someone who you respect, who leads the way in a respectful way, who has leadership confidence, right? Um, and this, I talked about a little bit of this, not just prestige, someone who's preferably in your circle, right? That's just a little bit ahead of you. If you get someone too far ahead of you, it's like, well, I need to do steps 3, 4, and 5 before I get to 6, 7, and 8, which is where you are. And that's intimidating and that's hard, right? So someone who's just a few steps ahead of you, recently been in your shoes, and who that climb is still kind of fresh. And that emotion is still there, like, oh, I made it. And they're much more likely to say, I want to help you because I still have that feeling, right? Oh, whoops. And the last thing is, do I respect what they think? Do I trust how they lead? Am I safe with them? You're going to be vulnerable in a mentor situation, right? You're going to tell them your weaknesses, your strengths, what you're struggling with. Um, and then can they communicate clearly? One of the things that absolutely drives me crazy is when I do something or ask for feedback and they say, oh, it was great, right? Do you ever get people like that? Like, oh, it's great. It's fine. Well, what was good about it? Oh, you're just awesome. What does that even mean, right? So the gift of giving feedback is just as important as receiving feedback, right? So
Can I
um
can I make a quick comment just on this
sure.
center box here, looking for proximity, not just prestige, which I 100% agree with. I would just give the caveat, just in case someone has an opportunity where they do get an offer from someone, like if your aunt or someone who loves you and cares about you
Oh, sure.
and is way higher than you offers, don't turn them down, just because they're
Yeah.
way ahead of you. But especially when you're seeking, for someone that you don't necessarily know or whatever, that
That's
proximity is
yeah.
going to make it much more likely for you to be successful. And sometimes you'll be lucky enough to have that pie in the sky person who for some reason takes an interest in you accept it. Like accept mentorship where you're going to
Sure.
get it if it's going to be valuable to you. But
Yeah.
if you're seeking it out, for sure.
Yeah.
And that CEO, for the most part, is going to have 100 other people seeking to have them as a mentor, and so you're going to be much more successful. But if they come and seek you out, say yes, right?
100%, 100%. And I think people pop up out of strange places when they know that you're willing to learn, right? I actually had lunch yesterday with someone that I just connected with on LinkedIn. She's here in St. George, and she's very well known in the community. And I made a comment on something. We have a mutual connection, and it was kind of scary. I was like, "Ooh, she's." But I said, "Hey, do you want to? I'd love to get to know what you're doing, and maybe we can partner on a few things." And I heard her story, and I was like, "Wow, you're way out of my league." But it was a mutual beneficial conversation, and she said as much. And so you have to get out of that comfort zone sometimes. But it doesn't need to be in your company. It doesn't have to be the CEO. It could be. They don't have to be 20 years ahead of you. They don't have to even be a woman. In fact, it can be powerful if you have a woman mentor. But if you're in an organization, oftentimes, and we've talked about sponsorship, right? If you have a man that's a mentor and you're in a man's world, sometimes that's helpful. In my life, I always have both because I know that there are blinders on to certain things that I know and I don't know about myself and about the situation in the room, right?
Lisa, I'm really glad you mentioned sponsorship. And if you're already going to talk about it later in the presentation, that's okay. But if not, I would love you to define sponsorship, how it differs from mentorship, and why it's so important that women also have sponsors as well as mentors. It's a different conversation, but
It is.
an important distinction to understand.
It is. I wasn't gonna define it and bring it up too much, but I would love to talk about it now. So a mentor is someone that helps you along your journey and helps you to obtain a goal. A sponsor is someone who believes in you, right? They know what you do either because they've seen you or because you've articulated that, right? And because of that belief, they help launch you within the company. They will sponsor you and go to that operations VP and say, I think you should consider her for that job. She's awesome. And this is why XYZ, and they know that because you've created that relationship, right? So it's not I need you to help me get that job. It's, hey, this is my goal. How do I get there? And I know that you have an in with so and so. Would you mind just putting in a good word type of thing? And it's not a schmoozy, it's not a brown nosy thing. It's a genuine, I am sponsoring you. If you think of like, the Olympics are going on right now, like a lot of Olympians are sponsored. People invest in them because they believe in them. And that's what a sponsorship is. It's someone that is higher in the company than you, oftentimes male. Let's be real, right?
Yeah,
That can say, give her a chance. I
yeah.
believe in her. And
So,
those
so
valuable, valuable relationships.
yeah. And so a sponsor actually has the power
Yeah.
to move things along for you on your behalf, whereas a
Hmm.
mentor can be anyone, right? Any organization, but a sponsor is positionally located so they can actually move you forward. And it's really important to have both. I've heard a lot of people say that women are under sponsored,
They are.
and
100%.
sometimes they say their women are over mentored, which um, I think women need a lot of mentors too.
Is
All
that
of us
possible
do.
to be over
But
mentored? I'm not done
yeah,
yet. Like,
yeah,
as long as we're growing, we need mentors, right?
for sure. But we don't have enough sponsors. And so if you're in a
Mhm.
position to sponsor, that is super
100%.
powerful. I try to sponsor as much as I can,
Yes.
because I have a little bit just through some of my relationships and things like that. I sometimes can use some of that influence to sponsor, but that's an important distinction to understand. And hopefully, as we're moving along in our careers, we will all be the beneficiary of someone who is willing to sponsor us as well.
Yeah, I love that. And you pay it forward, right? Someone sponsors you, you sponsor someone else. It's just that's how life should be, I think, in all things. So, um, another thing is you don't have to mentor up. You can have a peer mentor, like I had with my friend. That's very underrated, and I think that's really, really important. So, um, as far as the pad, start with one. Decide what role would be most helpful for you right now. Is it a librarian? Is it a teammate? Is it a coach? Is it the star, right? What do you need right now? And then start with that, right? Come up with at least three people per role. Start with your own contacts. Talk about it all the time. Hey, I'm looking for this. Be open to asking others for contacts. Hey, I think you know so and so. Would you be able to put me, can we talk? LinkedIn, obviously, there's lots of networking opportunities with tech moms and things like that. So find the right fit. I love this visual. This is a great like little mentor visual that I found. You know, larger mouse. He's been through life. Look at his sweet little tail, right? It's like I've had those traps. And he's helping that younger mouse just say, like, you know what, I'm gonna help you avoid these things. And I love that just kind of like as you think of assembling your pad, uh, think for people who can help you with those types of things. So Avengers assemble, we're gonna pad assemble, right? So I have a friend who collects figures, and this is a little snippet of their collection. But I do think just it's a good kind of visual for the team that you have that you can potentially have on your side, right? So um all those things, the action here is to assemble them. They're not going to come to you, right? You have to ask, you have to connect. Um, and if you need help asking, there's lots of different ways to do that, right? We can email, we can text, we can LinkedIn. The actual action would be this: list your people, reach out to them, reach out to all of them. Say you have three per, reach out to all three of them, and then you can decide. The likelihood of all three of them saying yes and all three of them responding to you is not very high, and that's okay, right? It has nothing to do with you, right? I would suggest that if you're on a LinkedIn situation where you don't know them, if you're precise and specific in your ask, you highlight your interests and skills, and you ask for a brief, defined conversation, and you do that twice, move on, right? Don't keep hitting the same person like, hey, I'm still here. Okay. They've already made their answer. They're not going to invest in you, and that's not a mentor that you want, right? But you can reach out twice. I've had people that I've reached out to, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I totally forgot." It's like, we're humans, right? Um, Text and email, same thing. Short and specific, suggest a time frame, and respect their time. Okay. And it can be scary to ask, but um, wonderful tools like ChatGPT can help you create a great invitation, based on what your needs are. You just set an agent for things like that. So, um, the first meeting, what do you do? Okay, I have this mentor, and now we're going to meet. What are we going to talk about, right? Just things to have in your head. Be vulnerable. You're going to have to share. Be flexible. They may ask you to do things that, are a little bit hard. So be flexible on open. Be respectful of their time. Show up on time. If they have 1 hour, don't go over. And be professional in what you talk about and how you share, right? So being vulnerable, you have to discuss your failures. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, right? Be learning that growth mindset. Listening is very important. And then, another thing that's valuable to me is providing feedback to the mentor. I really appreciate it, or this. I would like a little more of this. Next time, can we talk about this? I didn't understand that concept. Can you explain it again in a different way, right? And it's a me thing, it's not a you thing. Can you just, type these. Seek for ways to achieve objectives and contribute, right? Contribute to that conversation. And then, the time, obviously, we'll talk a little bit more about setting boundaries. Um, but the first meeting should be like introduction of you and setting the expectations for the mentorship. So let's talk about when in the first meeting, you need to talk about your why, right? Give context of your current state in your life, what you want the future state to be, and how you think they can help you get there. Okay. Ask them how they see themselves helping you. and then discuss what you want. What is that goal, right? So it's not just a, hey, I'm Lisa and this is what I do. And Robin, tell me about yourself. Okay, that was great. It's got to be goal directed. And that's you driving that bus, right? So the other thing in the first meeting, and when I've done this with organizations, I definitely, whoops, sorry, I'm on the wrong screen here. I definitely would suggest having some sort of partnership agreement if you're in an organization. Um, like I mentioned, I've set up several mentorship programs. If your organization does not have one and you want one set up, call me. If you want to set that up yourself, I would highly recommend using some sort of agreement because it's a common language like we talked about, right? So when are we meeting? How long are we meeting? How are we meeting? What is the goal? What is the expectation? I think the other thing is what are we going to talk about and what are we not going to talk about? I don't feel comfortable talking about politics. Okay, great. I don't feel comfortable talking about religion. Okay, we won't go there, right? Robin, I'm an open book. I'll talk about anything, right? So that's also that's it's also important for your mentor to know. Like, can I speak religiously about my faith and how it has influenced my life? Yes, no, right? Can I talk about my family life as it relates to who I am as a person? Define what you want, and that will help them, right? So you have all that structure in place. What do you do in the second meeting, right? You take that goal and you define that. Smart. You create, there's the block of clay. Okay. Now you're going to start carving it. You're going to make a prototype, right? You're going to have that design. So for those of you who don't know what SMART goals are, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. I don't know if you've heard about FAST goals. Have you heard about FAST goals, Robin? So they're frequently discussed, ambitious, specific, and transparent. Different, same. I think you need both. They need to be smart and fast, right? So they will help you define the goal. You talk about that. Come with curiosity, tons of curiosity, questions. I have a journal when I'm actively mentoring or seeking a mentor and mentoring. I have a journal and I write down questions and I write down references and I write down things like, oh, maybe I should ask her this, or things pop up in between meeting times. Come with your curiosity about them and their situation and about you. Hey, you know what? I think that I maybe have this tendency. Um, these are the reasons why. What do you think? Right? Take notes and record applicable takeaways and then ask for homework. Again, mentors invest where they see movement, right? So, um, and then subsequent meetings, review your homework, share your struggles, share your triumphs, refine the goal. Are you going at the right direction and speed? Are there obstacles? Are there roadblocks? Share them. You know, more questions, more curiosity, take more notes, and then ask for more homework. What should I do between this time and next? And the return on their investment is your growth. The return on your investment is your growth. So it's active in both ways. So review. We know what mentorship is. We know what the benefits are. We know how to determine if we're prepared or not. We've talked to type of mentors, how to find the right fit, how to get started, and then we talked about how to keep it going. So lots of puzzles in that, lots of pieces in that puzzle, but hopefully there's a bigger picture that we can see now about what mentorship is. And I would just say I love this visual here because a mentor helps you really bridge the gap between your current reality and your next level, right? And so the last thing I would say, continuing the airline theme, let's level up and take off, all of us together. And I believe in all of you. And again, reach out on LinkedIn if mentorship on all levels. If you don't know how to, if you want to be a mentor and you're nervous about that or want to know opportunities of how to mentor or where to mentor, continue this discussion about mentoring, or if in your organization, you need a mentorship uh, program set up, happy to help there as well. So just appreciate your time here.
I love it so much. This has been such a fantastic conversation, so informative, and I really love the way that you dove deep, right, into some of these topics to really understand how we can be successful, why it's so important, the steps we need to take, and how we can really be successful in this. And I just want to like emphasize and second everything that you've said, that a lot of us have already had mentors and maybe we didn't recognize it, we didn't notice they weren't a a formal mentoring situation. But we've had so many people tell us, Lisa, I don't know if you have seen this as well, but I know so many women my age, like professional women my age, who our first and maybe most important mentor was our dad. And
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen that in your conversations that you've had, but
Mhm.
so many of us, we're kind of an early generation of working women. A lot of us, our moms were not working outside
Mhm.
the home for pay, but our dads were. And so as we launched our careers, we started having that interest and support. So mentors can be family members. I
For sure.
mentor lots of people
For
in my
sure.
family.
Yeah.
They can be our friends. They can be our current bosses. We can look for mentors in lots of different situations. It
Mm.
doesn't need to be, it can be someone that we don't know, but so many of our natural mentors will be people that we know because they
Mhm.
already care about us, right? They're already invested in us. And by
Mhm.
being a little bit more deliberate, that we can benefit from that existing relationship in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
And you kind of have to keep it defined. Like sometimes when I'm talking to my niece, I'm like, okay, now I'm in my mentoring
You have
role.
your hat. Yeah.
Right, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm wearing my
Mhm.
mentoring hat. I've helped
Yeah.
several of my nieces, like, with salary negotiations and different things like that. And then the rest of the time, I'm just a fun aunt, and we're doing these other
Yeah.
things, right? So it
Mhm.
doesn't it a mentor doesn't have to only be a mentor. It can also be a other type of relationship that you have, but, um,
Mhm.
it's been so helpful. Thank you so much. And I hope we have another conversation. I would love to do another workshop on feedback. That's definitely been one on my list. So important for women. So thank you so much for being here. And everybody, thanks for joining us for this week's Better Way Thursday workshop. We're excited to see you next time, and we'll catch you then.
Okay.